Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone else. Welcome to another episode of Faith and Geekery. I had to think then what it was. At least I didn't get the name wrong this time. Welcome to Faith and Geekery, and my name is Mark, and basically I'm here to chat to you for the next hour. The focus tonight is going to be a bit about maps and map making and drawing maybe. Basically the reason why I'm doing this is because tomorrow I have a campaign to do. Would like to enjoy to do, and therefore I need to do a little bit of work, and so I'm going to be doing some map making. So I thought there'd be a good subject because it kind of covers other things. So I've got a couple of books here as well, but the very first question of all to ask you is, what have you been up to? What things of a geekery nature have you been up to this week? So please kind of put a comment, add a comment please on your videos or otherwise. Could send an email, but it might not get to me in time. So feel free to send comments, and we'll be cracking on in a moment with some map making, just like over here. Like it's got some plain paper ready to go. But for now, hello. Oh. Sorry about that. For now, I thought we'd start off with a new kind of feature. Because we're going to start off with something called Geeky News. And so just in the last week or so, I've been aware, we've been off for a little while. I thought we would start with this new feature where we bring a little bit of geekiness into the news. So here we go. Hello, welcome to Geeky News. Lego are advertising their new Sonic set, as well as this week we've also seen that Doctor Who have been releasing some studio photos. So if you could see that, whoa, in fact, here's a smaller one. Yes, we have some new bits here, if you can see. In fact, I will bring up the larger one. So can you see here, we have Sonic in Lego form with Robotnik and a couple of the evil baddies, and in the background there is kind of larger sets, and so that has kind of been announced in this last couple of days, and that's quite fun. As well as we've got the 15th Doctor in the 60s kind of get up, as well as what's the name, Jinx Monsoon, the character. So you can just see just there, in fact just down here, Jinx Monsoon, who is going to be the one of the baddies, and I'm really excited by all these things. I'm always a bit concerned when they talk about in Doctor Who when it's the most powerful enemy yet, and you just there kind of going, is it really? Are they really going to beat the Daleks? You know, when ratings drop a little bit. So anyway, but I look forward to that. Also in Geekery News, I've completely killed my 3D printer, or rather I've scratched the glass bed of my 3D printer, so that ain't producing anything more. So that, ladies and gentlemen, was Geeky News. Well, let's see if that feature ever returns again. So please feel free to write a little comment about your own geeky news or what you've been up to in a geeky way this week. And tonight we're going to crack on with some map making. So I guess it comes with a spoiler warning, because tomorrow night I'll be doing Dragons of Stormwreck Isle offline. It's never going to go online, I don't think. So if you're involved with this or hope to get involved with this is like one of the starter sets from Dungeons and Dragons. Basically, look away now because I don't want you to get any spoilers from that. So we're going to kind of cut to start drawing this. I will say it's a little bit annoying because this is a new starter set where you kind of get a couple of booklets in a lovely cardboard box. You open the cardboard box and realise that half the contents are actually missing, or rather they've padded it out with a plastic, it was a cardboard kind of insert, and so therefore you don't get as much as what you're kind of hoping for. And in regard to this kind of like little starter adventure, you do kind of get some basic maps, but you don't actually get proper playable maps. So there's no chance of having that, and you've also got it's not a clean version because you kind of have the key kind of points already on it, so you can't even just kind of zoom into it or otherwise, which is a little bit frustrating. So what I'm going to have to do, I managed to find some online, but again it's not large enough, and I could zoom in and enlarge it, but I guess I wanted the experience of making these for myself. So I'm going to kind of put us onto another mode here, look like that, and I went to the my brother-in-law lent me some graph pad paper, which is a very good kind of, this is student graph paper. Well, I'm not getting paid for any of this, because no one will. But can you see it's in like the grids section, A3 for now, and basically I'm going to hopefully align it over it, and I'm going to start drawing over the top like that. And so I have got a reference map, so to help me, but I'm kind of just going to be, dare I say, making it up as I go along. But what I'm going to do first of all is see how many squares I can get into it. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12. 11 squares, that's really nice. 15. The reason why I'm using this size, by the way, is for characters to be able to fit inside them. Is it an inch? I think it is. And so what we're going to do here is create the beginnings of our adventure. I was trying to find my graph pens and I couldn't find them anywhere, so I'm going to use a trusty biro for now, but basically start to create the set, and I think I'm going to go from about here across to here to across to here, so I'm just going to start doing this. And it's interesting with them in regards to maps, it can be very helpful to get a bit of a perspective. I have played kind of Dungeons and Dragons and this kind of stuff with just an approximate idea of what these kind of maps look like, but I think it always helps to have a proper grid in front of you. I know that there are kind of people who would do play Dungeons and Dragons in the mind, but if I'm honest, I'm just really forgetful, and I just kind of and to be honest, I'm a visual person. I love the visual side of stuff much better, and so yeah, it's going to be much nicer. I've got to make sure I've got the right doorways now. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And I'm not doing any of the additional detail just yet, because I kind of want to reveal that as we go. So for now we've just got a very basic setup at the moment, very rubbish indeed, and let's just start to put in some kind of cliff edginess. Just copy that like that, like so. So please be in touch if you've got anything of comments of what your geekery have been up to. If you've been up to much. I did say in the Geeky News that my printer has died. I mean, it still works, but I've got to just give it some tender loving care, and I've now kind of learnt the lessons of not pulling the plastic off before it's too late. Yeah. Oh, you know what? I decided to go kind of really bold, but actually, let's just do this. Get a rough idea. So, for anybody watching, it's part of the Dragons of Stormwreck Isle. Please don't. Oh, you know what? Let's just do that. Gives it some idea. And then, rather than putting the full grid on, I'm just going to give it some X's So So there we go. So that's just a very basic. I might give some more detail later depending on how I go. That's the very beginnings of it. I'm just trying to work out. You know what? I will create these rooms here, and I'll cover them up later. Or otherwise, what I'm going to do is find myself getting very confused, and that's no good to anybody, is it? Especially if people are expecting proper things. So. Here we go, 3 by. As I say, I could print these off, I could try and expand them, but for me, yeah, I'd rather. Oh, you know, I've gone wrong already. Let's just do that. Let's mix it up a little bit, shall we? Yeah, wow. How have I managed to do that already? It's like the Lego episode all over again. So I'm just putting some. Basically, the grids are for. The grids are for kind of combat, in case you're doing combat, but also just exploration, and it physically places people on the map. And I think this is where the general idea of map comes into things, is that as well as kind of playing this for Dungeons and Dragons, I've kind of got other examples from map making. So I've got some brief reference pieces I'm using, and yeah, regular people will know that I love kind of Terry Pratchett, but I find that with Terry Pratchett, first of all, I mean, even the is it Kirby's kind of illustrations, they kind of can give you an idea of a character. So a lot of the Discworld stuff, a lot behind me, you really kind of reference. You get a sense of who the person is even before you start reading from the front cover illustration. But in here, for example, in Night Watch, just to be able to kind of get a sense of where the unseen university is, or like, in fact these are the shadows in the shades. I mean, and the River Ankh, and it's just really helpful to kind of really place yourself in the geography of it and kind of get a sense of where Vimes is going, or otherwise. So kind of maps are actually really helpful, and that's a recent example, or a relatively recent example. I'm sure it's very old now, but even like kind of Tolkien, and having kind of the maps of Mordor and places like that. Fun fact though, I wasn't actually ever into Lord of the Rings that much, but I'll leave that for debate for another time. So maps can be really helpful to kind of really get you invested, or really help your imagination with stuff, and yeah, so it can be, in fact, let's do bam, yes, and I'm just going to change one more thing. Where is it? There it is. There we go, that's better. So it can help us kind of invest and kind of really use our imagination to see things much more clearly, and especially when you start to kind of bring creatures into play, you get a sense of direction and how far they can travel. And so each one of these is each one square is 5 feet, and so I'm just going to put this on here as well, just because I'm not just making this for me. This is for the players, and so we're going to do that. In fact, what is also on here is some detail of some beds. So we're just going to create some beds here, a little pillow, some bedding. Let's just do a bit of shading as well. Little desk. A little something over there. Yeah, that's the problem with not having the key. I'm just having to do a bit of guesswork here actually. So that sort of thing beginning to build up just a little bit. If this, you can use software for this as well, especially so whilst this session we are doing kind of old school, as it were, and I guess that could be theatre of the mind if it's proper old school. But what you can do is you can use some modern technology, and I do have that, and I think Paul might join us in a moment. So yeah, I think this is one technique, and what I want to do for my campaign, or for my kind of folks, is give them an experience of it old school as well as doing a bit more modern. So what I've got is a version of this on my computer, and therefore I could use it as a digital thing using a tabletop display, which again was made. Oh, I've just realised what that is. A chair. Always helps. But yeah, it can help just whether it doesn't have to be flash, it doesn't have to be lovely graphics and fantastic graphics, but I want to really kind of give my folks an idea of the different sort of thing you can do with Dungeons and Dragons. But yeah, let's see from there. And I believe Paul might join us in a minute, but he might be getting his kit set up. So I hope he doesn't deafen me in a sec when he comes on. I like my hearing. Cool. So folks, if you haven't thought about anything already, what geeky stuff have you been up to? Have you got any geeky news? Please do leave a comment, or if you've got any questions. I've got... yeah, okay, Paul's saying that he's not sure how loud it's going to be. Oh, good. If you suddenly see me going through my ears, you can know what's happened. But we'll offer him a warm welcome. Even if I can't hear. No, not really. So, hello!
Hello, I'll turn myself up gradually and see if it deafens you.
Can you do that? Just trying to think of a better...
No, you definitely don't want too much of me.
that puts us about right, doesn't it?
I'd have thought so, yeah.
Yeah. How are you doing, Paul? You alright?
Yeah, not too bad, actually.
Realise we are in a public space, so I can't talk too much about bits and pieces. Did you get sorted with a lift situation?
I did indeed get my lift conundrum mainly solved.
Oh, jolly good. And that sounds more ominous now. We're not referencing any details, isn't it? Let's move on, shall we? Yeah, and how are you doing? You alright?
Yeah, pretty good, actually.
Good. And you were quite interested in coming on I hope you were interested in coming on when I'm talking about maps and otherwise. You just missed me talking about Tolkien and Terry Pratchett, kind of as reference to enable you to kind of jump into maps and into stories and kind of imagine far better than kind of, especially if you're kind of visually motivated into stuff. Have you got any examples or any ideas of...
Well, to be honest, they're two of my favourite ones, because I probably spent as much time with the maps of Middle-earth as I did in the books.
So I got... Are those the ones? I mean,
Yep,
this is a
that looks
reproduction
good, yep.
from... Yeah.
Somewhere, if I could find it, I think I've actually got the sort of Discworld Atlas, and I used to have a larger pull-out version of the sort of Middle-earth maps in a sort of guide to Middle-earth. But I'm not sure where they've got to.
So that's the maps of the shades and various other bits.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen various kind of people with their kind of printed versions, like colour copies of this kind of on walls and bits and pieces. I dare say when it's a bit more popular, dare I say, but I knew people who were a bit more into it. Or student days when people were happy to have those sort of things very widely, obviously on their walls. Yes. Yeah, I think kind of maps are really helpful, aren't they? Obviously, for for usual purposes, but for kind of getting a sense of an area, and especially when everything is described in words and otherwise, just to be able to have like a picture version, an illustration where you can actually get a sense of stuff. I think it's better, isn't it, just to be more immersive in that experience.
The map also fills in the world around the bits being described.
Yeah.
So you might have this beautiful description of the Shire, but you've also got this map showing the bits that you're not told about in the books.
Yeah.
So you get a slightly more possibly complete world being created for you.
Yeah. I think that's about right, isn't it?
And of course, when you add the sort of D&D stuff in, your map has to include the bits that you're not intending the players to go into.
Yes.
Because you know they will.
Yeah. Well, this is it. This is why I'm having to do all of it. Because you can guarantee that's where they're going to go. And if people are new to Dungeons and Dragons, yeah, you kind of... It's one of those interesting things, isn't it? Because actually, you're there as... I'll do this correctly now. You're going to be there as a storyteller or as an adventurer enabler. It's not... Some people kind of tend to think it's like you against the adventurers, and I think that's a bit of a shame, really, if you kind of go into the game expecting that, because I think you're already going to be at a loss, and if you... I know that some people try and kind of dupe and kind of better the DM or the game master, and actually it's not about that. It's about the and again, you can have some DMs like that as well, really, who if they're not careful, if they are in it to kill off the party, then it's not going to let anybody kind of have the best experience of the game, and you're going to really kind of struggle with... Oh, you know, I've already made it too big already. So I'm talking. Never mind. You know, it's meant to be like it's a... I was about to say competitive. I don't mean that. It's a cooperative between the dungeon master and the players, and I think when a game works well is when everybody is in it for the journey, for the adventure, and it's not about the DM just trying to kill everyone off, and it's not just about the group just trying to sorry, I realised I'm actually off the camera here, aren't I? It's not just about the party trying to dupe and kind of think of ways in which the DM hasn't kind of prepped or planned the game. You know, it is genuinely about seeing how best you can kind of journey and adventure together. And yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong, there are times when a party can accidentally get it wrong, and there's times when a DM can get it wrong. But hopefully, amongst that meddle and the impromptu nature of it, I think you can kind of mash together and hopefully get enough out of it for everybody in an adventure. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just going to go up here.
I've got to admit, I am glad of mapping software because my drawing skills have never been good enough.
Yeah, well, you can discuss this later. It's yeah. I'm getting there. I think the problem is that what I haven't done is got the key in front of me to remind me what's in all of these kind of individual rooms and things. So I'm kind of drawing them with a bit of imagination in the hope that at some... Oh, the bunks. Oh, that's what they are, the bunks. I thought they were like little boats or something. I don't know. Let's create them as if they're both. But yes, it's. I think with role playing games and things like this, or rather Dungeons and Dragons, there really is this kind of cooperation, and hopefully you kind of gel together as a group and otherwise. And what I really enjoy with this is that actually it's not always what you expect, and that it counts for you as a player as well as the DM. And I think it can be quite funny when if you've got something planned, and suddenly actually the whole party goes off on a bit of a tangent, and as long as you're prepared and planned enough, you can kind of go with them, and you can kind of find yourself on a much more of a funny adventure than ever you would imagine. That being said, I think there are times when it can also abysmally go wrong, but I think as long as people are in good spirits and the kind of people have kind of gone with you on that journey, then I don't see why you can't kind of just can't just kind of go with it really. I'm hoping that this is going to make sense. Oh yeah, that is meant to be the cliff edge there. There we go. I really wish I'd thought about kind of style when I was doing this. Never mind. So those bits are going to clip onto there eventually. Just need to focus on creating the last of those bits in that room. Now that I know it's bunks and not boats. Always helps. That's why there I've put like a little seat. Assuming that's what it was. Let's just cover that over, shall we? But in fact, what I haven't done is put a grid on there. But we've also had it where you start playing the game and then suddenly realise the whole adventure goes off on one, and it could go off on one from the very start. And so people famously, I follow Matt Colville on YouTube, and he talks about various adventures, but one of the ones that occurs quite a lot is when people think that they've the DM goes, right, okay, the first session, let's see how we get, and prepares all this kind of stuff, and they spend the whole session just in the pub and actually don't, or the tavern should I say, and they don't actually get anywhere at all. It's just like, oh right, okay, because they decided to pick a fight with the landlord or something, and I think in fact there's one story where someone talks about the quickest campaign or the quickest character kill, where basically one of the characters in the party picks a fight with the other one, and their basic introduction is I don't like being touched, and so the druid hits the tiefling or something, and the tiefling just hits him back, and completely unknown to this kind of new party is that the druid has got very low health. He is flawed on he rolls kind of his death saves and fails, and the only person who is a healer in this sparse tavern is the druid is on the floor, so he dies instantly. He dies within the first initiative, or not even that. So it was just quite hilarious of how quickly it goes, because it can go south, and I think hopefully that's the advantage of having a good, or at least a half able DM, is to know when it is going south and kind of try and either let it go south and let them learn their lesson, or you kind of try and steer into the curb and do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, So I realise I'm just talking a little bit about D&D and otherwise, but maps are all part of that. Right, so I'm just going to start my next turn. So basically what we're doing is going up a cliff edge here, and I'm off the map again, I'm off the screen. Let's just try and do this. I'm trying to just factor in a little bit of overlap so it's easier for me to set up as I go along.
I think the thing I'd love to do one day with the D&D campaign would be something akin to if you ever played anything along the lines of the Zork text adventure games, where you often had to draw your own map as you explored, otherwise you'd get hopelessly lost.
Oh. Yeah, well, to be honest, I've referenced that as like kind of, is it the adventure of the mind or what they called them, where you don't kind of have any of the maps or otherwise, and that was my first experience of D&D, and it was my brother-in-law again, and shout out to Tom. I doubt he's watching, or will watch, but basically. What was interesting is that we started going down into a cavern, and there's various doors and passageways, and I was like, oh, you know what, I might make a note of which door we take, and otherwise, and it gets to a point where you're running away from some big ass, a big baddie sort of thing, and it's just like, yeah, where do you go? It's just like, oh, right, okay. Fortunately, I think I was the only one who'd actually written anything down. And so it's like, I think I'm going in this direction.
Yeah.
I am not sure. Yes, that was fun.
So I think I've kind of got an imagination of something that's got more of a exploration vibe, where the aim of your adventure is actually to map.
Okay.
And possibly part of your outcome might be seeing how close you actually come to the Dungeon Master's map at the end of the game.
Right, so the actual aim is to have an accurate map.
Yeah, so you can have all sorts of other things happening along with it, because you've got this fully realised map.
Yeah.
But none of the players can see it. Yeah, so they actually have to create their own map as they go along.
I feel as if there's a youth worker icebreaker about that, though, isn't it? Why they do that? Where you've got to draw something on someone else's back, and you've got to try and work out if it is exactly what you drew. And so someone draws like a car or something on the back, and they've kind of made a weird giraffe or something. Have you seen that before?
I think I've seen something like that, yeah.
It occasionally does the rounds.
I'm not much of one for icebreakers.
No.
They're always painful.
Yeah. Just as painful as watching me do a map. Right, okay, so to be honest, I'm getting there with this. I'm just hoping that I've kind of gone a bit wide really, but never mind. Let's just bring it in a little bit. What I quite like as well is that when you're kind of faced with these sort of these moments about making when we're kind of faced with making maps, it is good. For example, I'm using a reference point here. I've kind of got a map that I'm kind of using, whereas there can be other ways in which you can kind of make maps. So you can either go kind of the random route, and I'm talking here about kind of the large kind of global maps. I've seen it where people throw rice onto a bit of paper, and you kind of see where it lands, and you just kind of draw around the patches of ice. That would not work on paper, but you kind of you draw around it on the paper, and you kind of go, oh yeah, that's kind of my island. You know what, I'm going to just throw this out into something a bit different, because I don't want to go off this page any further. Let's just, oh yeah, sorry, let's just call it there. The other thing is actually using stuff that is known to you. So I've got with the family campaign that we use, rather than doing anything. I was really struck for inspiration, and I was like, oh, what can I use? And I don't want to kind of use something really obvious like the map of the of Great Britain, because that would be obvious to my wife, sort of thing. Whereas I thought, you know what? Well, what I could do is actually use part of it and use an obscure bit. And so because I was from Yorkshire, I just thought, you know what? I'll do East Yorkshire as its own island, and that was quite helpful, really. So I've decided to plot where the big towns were, like York and Hull and Beverley and things like that, and that was kind of the that kind of naturally and even the where the rivers, where the River Hull is and the Humber Estuary is. Well, the Humber Estuary was like the end of the island, sort of thing. And so you'd have to kind of know it a little bit better to actually understand the actual geography of it. And then I added some mountains and things like this. But actually, it was a very easy way of creating, and I literally just had it on my wall as well. So it was cheating in a big way, but I didn't mind. So let's just do this in here. I think this is a storeroom of some kind.
So I think the equivalent of that I've done is the role-playing game I used to quite enjoy was Maelstrom, which was, I think it was published 1980s originally, but it was 16th century, 17th century Britain.
Oh, right.
With theoretically period-accurate classes and loads and loads of stats for weapon and armor and all sorts of fun things.
Yeah.
And yeah, getting into that, you could just go and find 16th and 17th century maps of parts of the UK and set your adventure in wherever that was.
Oh, wow. So you could actually literally just place it into old maps.
So the sort of example adventure they included in the book was, I think, a journey from St Albans to London.
Yeah.
And they didn't have any maps for that, but if you go and dig around in a library, as it would have been at the time, finding a 16th century map of St Albans wasn't terribly difficult.
Yeah.
Or of the route from there to London. So you could use those original maps to sort of build your adventure around. Or if you went completely crazy, as I think we did once, it was sort of, right, we're going to have a 16th century exhibition to the New World. With what was known on maps at the time. Don't think that one went very well. I've got a horrible feeling that might have been my dreadful idea as well. And an even more horrible feeling that you're frozen. Ah, yes, we temporarily seem to have lost Mark, so hopefully he's going to be able to reconnect soon. It's a shame. I was kind of enjoying figuring out where his map was going. I think the stuff I had with maps around some of those role-playing games it was always fun to explore, and actually sometimes to try and make sense of some of those early maps, because a lot of the symbols on them was completely different to the ones that I was more used to. Hang on, I will just see if we can find him. I'm sure that he's trying to reconnect at the moment, possibly in desperate need of a map to find his way back. Oh, here we go. We appear to have.
Yes, hello. I seem to have lost my internet,
Ah.
which is the first time in ages, so I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry for leaving you in the lurch. I'm now tethering to my phone, of all things, so that's fun. Oh, man, that's very frustrating.
Well, I was
Sorry,
just
folks.
suggesting that you might need a roadmap to find your way back.
Yeah. Right. Oh,
Well,
that's really annoying.
if you're going to get a pun from me, it'll be a bad one.
No, well, yeah, it was a bit bad. We know each other now.
Yeah, I filled the gap
Oh.
by sort of continuing with the sort of theme of the stuff I've been talking about with Maelstrom, with the 16th and 17th century maps, which could occasionally be interesting to try and follow because they're sort of a lot of the symbols were very different.
Oh yeah, because then how would you? I mean, would you just make it up? I mean, is it just for people in the room with you? Wouldn't it? Obviously, from the 80s, it wouldn't be any internet-related kind of content.
No, and to get hold of the maps would involve a trip to the library.
So it was actually designed for old-fashioned maps.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they intended that you'd use the maps. I think they intended that you might make up an adventure using that rule set and maybe draw your own maps. But we decided it would be fun to, go and find the original maps of Britain at the time.
Yeah. Well, again, this is it, isn't it? It's part of that kind of. It's part of how we use our imagination, and kind of the good form of respect and kind of. Of appreciation is when people copy your work, isn't it? Really, as long as people credit you. And that reminds me, actually, the person who created these maps. Who was it? Does it actually say? It'd be really annoying if it doesn't actually say on the. It may be on the other paperwork. I may have to find that out. So. What I'm drawing here is a library, I think. Put some books on here, some shelves.
Yeah, I think the strangest thing we did with that was I think you may have been cut off as I was talking about it. Was trying to have an adventure in the New World using maps that existed of the New World as it was at the time.
Oh, crazy! As in New World.
It did not go very well.
New World, as in just.
Well, one of the character classes you could choose was, I think they did have sailors and soldiers as character classes, so it was sort of the British version of conquistadors, I guess. So there was a very much a Francis Drake feel to that one.
Yeah.
But they hadn't actually, from memory, I don't think they had any sort of sailing mechanics, so we more or less made it up as we went along.
That's cool. Well, of course, I'm just thinking when you said about the kind of about plotting your own maps and otherwise, one of the computer games that kind of springs to mind is Civilization for me, and kind of playing that. Or another one would be Red Alert 2, where I think we kind of downloaded our own map builder, so we could kind of you could create your own map that way. And especially if you'd done already the set maps in the world, I think it was very it kind of definitely expanded the adventure further by creating your own kind of.
But it was quite fun to be able to create a map.
The opportunity to create your own.
Well, being able to create a map that was designed to complement or make your style of play harder was also quite a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, there were times when my older brother would refuse to play a map because it would definitely favour me more than him. But then at the same time, I remember the opportunity to build the really big, gigantic maps, which would be several megabytes. And in those days,
Mhm.
megabytes were a thing, especially an issue if it took too long to load up. Yeah, so I definitely remember kind of big, expansive ones, and we would spend hours playing these games, and especially with my younger brother as well. So when it was a three-player, and you could just kind of get lost in Red Alert.
Mm.
Of course, my parents got really annoyed with that because they just didn't see their children for many hours, or maybe they were relieved. It's hard to say. Yeah, right. So I'm just going to carry on doing this. So technically, I've only got kind of 4 maps to do, and this is by far the biggest of the maps. But this is where I kind of needed to get them done. I really wish I'd thought about kind of a technique of cliff edges and otherwise.
Mm.
Never mind. What I'm tempted to do is maybe even go over these at a later point, and yeah, kind of either beautify them or otherwise. I'm not sure. Yeah, so that is that. Library of books. And this, for example, is one of these kind of places where you're just never sure whether are people going to just take a look into the library and move on, or are they going to spend a whole session just kind of going through. And what I quite like with these kind of campaigns is that they kind of take some of this into account, and there's either kind of shortcuts to sort of say, well, yeah, you do this, and you don't do that, and as a DM, you can kind of just explain very clearly that sort of say, well, you look around, and there's a lovely section on gardening, but nothing else appears. But you can take a couple of these books if you want to, but the librarian is overlooking. He's looking at you to sort of say, well, are you going to bring it back? But then it depends on how mischievous your party is and whether they want to take on the librarian. And then you reveal to
It depends. If it's the unseen university librarian, I'll give it a miss.
Absolutely. And that's it, isn't it? The kind of this naive kind of optimism, going, oh yeah, I can take everyone on, and you kind of go, well, actually, they're much more competent than what you are. Right. Oh, should I do this? So I'm getting to the point now where I'm just trying to work out whether do I just do a full page again, or do I? Because there's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, a whole page of a corridor now, and it could affect the gameplay, or it might not. It'll get a bit boring. I'll tell you what. No, we'll just do this. That is actually the most boringest bit of map I've ever done.
Well, your description is just going to have to make the corridor really exciting.
It's just a coast. It's just like an edge. It's not even, I don't know. My only hope is that.
Please tell me if they get to the end, they've got to turn around and go back.
Well, I'm tempted just to change a corner here and put the big temple there rather than actually have it on another bit of paper, just because it's just seemed a bit of a waste. Yeah, I'll tell you what, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Let's hope that it isn't crucial to the mission. Let's do that. And this is a great thing is that you can make these things up. You can just go off piste,
Mm-hmm.
and I am. Oh, but I'm now coming in from a different direction. Is that going to have an impact? Stuff it. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If anybody is online who's played this campaign before, who wants to kind of give me a heads up, then please do so now. Before I completely mess it up. So I believe that these are some statues of some sort. There you go. I'm fairly sure that won't be missed too much. And it's a good use of time. Anyway, so just if you're joining us, I'm just doing some. In fact, my sheet of paper is off the screen. Just creating some lovely kind of maps for the Dragons of Stormwreck Isle. And I'll tell you what, in a little while, we are nearly out of time, aren't we? We've talked a lot about map making. I was going to do some talk about drawing as well, really, but maybe we'll use that for another time. But yeah, I hope you get an idea of the playground, the space of where we can kind of have these encounters. And don't get me wrong, it's not always about kind of just attacking people and bashing and that sort of stuff. It can be just kind of a real good adventure. I realised today also I've not talked very much about a faith element. I was also reflecting about kind of the places where we kind of have maps and otherwise, and actually I don't know if you're a child of the 70s or 80s with Good News Bibles and like the maps at the back of them, where actually you're just there kind of going, I'm not actually that invested in it. I don't really want to know where kind of Paul's been on. Is kind of but I guess you could kind of upload that to a role playing game. Use that for your what was that what you were saying about? Yeah. I guess that is one of the things where actually you could use it to help yourself get a rough idea of the geography, but I don't think I ever got a grasp of it, if I'm honest. I think I just was like, yeah, fair enough, that's that. I don't think I really needed to know very much. I think I guess I took it as just as read, really.
Yeah, I think I find the maps more interesting now, particularly as a sort of semi-historian. I like actually being able to look at distances and see where things are in relation to each other now, and use that to make some sense of the story. Although occasionally I'll look at that and go, "No, there's no way that happened like that." And I quite enjoy it when they've had some of the archaeological digs of parts of the ancient world and gone, well, this is the way it's described, and this is what we've uncovered. And this doesn't tie up with any maps. But actually, if we move this way, then maybe the crossing was here rather than here. And you end up with a very different picture of it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't ultimately change the story, but some of our understanding of where it took place and actually how that might have been possible there.
Yeah. I mean, I think it kind of helps, but again, all of these things, it's about perspective, isn't it? And sometimes it can help, it sometimes can hinder. Sometimes we have the words that I can use, and I find that campaigns that I've been involved with, kind of some of the words you kind of go, is that really helpful, or the bits kind of are described in a certain way, and to the DM it makes a lot of sense. You kind of go, aha, they're going to remember this bit. And you can get caught up on completely the wrong stuff. And what can be very obvious to some people isn't to others. And dare I say, I feel as if that could be the case in church as well. But you're definitely kind of assuming that people are going to go a certain way with an idea or with their imagination. So I'm still just trying to work out how best to do this, and I think I may just what I should have done is maybe oh no, in fact, let's go with this. Yeah, but a bit quiet with people tonight. I realise I've been talking and lost internet connection then, which didn't help. But yeah, folks, if you are around, what sort of stuff you've got up to this week in a geeky way, non-geeky way? Oh. Yeah.
And I've just been doing my usual diving back into a bit of gaming.
Cool. What have you been playing recently?
Oh, I've got back a little bit this week into Valheim, exploring a sort of randomly generated map and crafting resources and fighting all sorts of weird and wonderful monsters.
Just like,
and that I've been
that's
quite
just your
enjoying
day
that.
job. Cool. Jolly good. What platform, is that on Steam by any chance, or is it what is it on?
That is on Steam, yeah.
Yeah, I had a feeling.
It's a surprisingly small install, only 1 gigabyte.
Blimey.
But that's actually the exploring aspect of that is probably the most fun, and the way they've done the map I quite like. I think there is probably a setting that you can turn off the fog of war so you don't end up having to explore as much, but that never seems quite as enjoyable to me.
No.
And I think I read that they now have plans for the next update of it to have a mode where there is no map marker, so you'll get the map as you explore, but there won't be a little bit showing where you are on it.
Oh wow! So, that just kind of sounds a bit more intriguing, doesn't it? Really.
I think I've only come across one other game that does that. I think it was Outward or something along those lines, and you had to learn to memorize landmarks and figure out where you are from that.
Yeah. Bizarrely, and I realise we're coming to the end of our time, really, but wasn't it Toe Jam and Earl? Can you remember that game? Did you ever come across that?
No.
Really crazy cartoon creatures, and basically you're trying to find parts of your spaceship, and you kind of have like a kind of a like this, but maybe at a bit more of an angle, so you can see kind of characters walking around, but they kind of appear, and all you have is the fog of war sort of thing. And this is like a Mega Drive game from the 90s, or even 80s maybe. And basically you've got funky music, and you're kind of walking around, and you've got to try and find an elevator to the next level up, and you get chased by lots of different crazy creatures, and if you fall over the edge, you'll fall down to the level below.
Yep.
That you've just kind of completed, but you have no idea of what the level looks like until you go exploring around it, and you can come across like bees and kind of crazy singing Valkyrie ladies, like operatic Valkyries, ice cream vans, a little boogeyman, or bogeyman, but I think he actually boogies, and things like that. But the problem is that if you fall down onto an area of the map that on the map below isn't anything, then you fall down another level. And likewise, if you fall down another bit of the map that has no bit below it, you fall down another level, and so it can be really frustrating. But once you get into like the next level up, it's like these little floating islands basically, and you can sometimes go on this merry go around and work out exactly where you are, and suddenly realise that actually the portal to the next level is somewhere completely different, which is rather annoying. But hours of fun playing that sort of game. Right. I think. I think next time we're going to maybe do something a bit different again. Less of me just working, basically. So let's. I'll have a bit of a think. If folks you wanted to be involved with some of the conversation and otherwise, you can be part of the community, which should be on the description of the video, or it should be on there. Equally, if you kind of want to be part of the, just kind of like and not have to fall into these episodes, if you don't want to follow or subscribe, that would be good as well. Thank you for watching tonight. Thank you, Paul, for all that you've done. I'm going to just finish doing this drawing and then I will kind of come to more of an official end. Paul, have you been gaming online recently, or has that started back up again for you?
Not yet. I'm hoping to get going again at some point. Just trying to figure out what I'd like to play. And after some of this talk about maps, I'm kind of hankering for something with a bit of exploration in it rather than too much combat.
Yeah.
We'll see how long that lasts.
Yeah. Well, what's this? Yeah, so I have got...
Could be that I go back to my occasional attempts to replay and fully complete Morrowind, which occurs every now and then.
I don't even know what Morrowind is. Explain it to me.
So it's the Elder Scrolls 3,
right.
the first 3D, or properly 3D, Elder Scrolls game, in which you are dumped as a prisoner on an island and told to go off and fulfill your destiny, essentially. But it's one of the interesting ones in that
that's nice.
you fill in the map as you go. So it's got the fairly comprehensive fog of war, and you're more or less told to go somewhere, and there might be a sign, if you're lucky, pointing you in the right direction. And it's only as you explore that the map itself fills in.
Yeah.
Well, and it's more or less from the start, you can go anywhere. But
yeah, I mean, I find that with like Civilization is that, but I feel as if in recent incarnations of it haven't been as good. So you can kind of explore things, which is fine. It's the same old exploration, but they have a bit more of an inbuilt system and this diplomacy kind of stuff that it doesn't kind of give you the freedom as what like the first couple of civilizations used to do. It kind of feels quite restrictive in many ways, and I'm a little bit I was a bit disappointed with that last time. I kind of wanted to to explore it, I guess. It's just a bit,
I quite like exploring the randomized maps, but there doesn't seem to be quite the same rush of I've discovered a bit of gold, I'm going to try and build a city on top of this before anyone else does.
Yeah, well, I mean the latest one you do have to be aware of the resources, but it's much more it depends. So you could have like horses nearby, and that will affect whether you can have a cavalry. Cavalry or not. But I don't know. It's the diplomacy thing where they'll kind of start arguing with you about not starting war or else, and it's just like, well, no, I just want to go and attack that tribe because they're really winding me up, and it's like, even though they're kind of plotting against you, they've been just mean. If you want to be mean back, and then it's like all the diplomacy. I just don't understand it. I think maybe it's my issue. And the other one is just much more straightforward, just to get on. Anyway.
Yeah.
I'm still going with this, and it will be many hours, I'm sure, of fun. But it really would be fun just to get on and do. So I'm going to do this, bang. And, in fact, let's take that off. But yeah, thank you, Paul, for joining me, so that I've not been alone. And again, thank you very much for covering me when my internet went, which was rather irritating. Basically, I've got just a couple more bits of this map to do, just occasional other bits, and then then I have got yes, 2 more to do on top of that, but I will rush those through because I need to get them done by tomorrow night. Bless you. Thank you for joining me, Paul. Is it okay to drop you
Pleasure.
off for
Certainly is.
for the rest of that? So bye bye. Thank you, and just
No,
drop us a line of when you're going to be next online. We can share it and support you in that way. And thank you for talking about maps tonight, and we'll catch you at some other time. Bye bye. And then let's just get back to me on here. Yeah, folks, thank you for joining tonight. Still tweaking and finding our way with this, and maybe I'll find a better expression of this. But thank you for joining us. Like I say, no one's commented this evening about their geeks and their sorry, their geekdom and otherwise, and their geeky news. So that'll be something for next time. Let's go for something a bit more fun, shall we? But thank you for joining us. Again, just like I said earlier about feeling free about to join the community on WhatsApp and Discord and things like that. Equally, feel free to join, follow all this kind of stuff in the various places that you've been watching, whether it's YouTube or Facebook or Twitch. Nearly got that wrong then. And yeah, it just kind of finishes with me to say thank you for watching, thank you for coming along, and I look forward to chatting to you soon. So bless you, folks. Thank you, and see you next Thursday.